Welcome, folks, to the 79th episode of the Lessons from the Cockpit show. I am your host, Mark Hasera, and for over 60 years, my passion has been aviation. I'm a retired KC-135 pilot and veteran of 4 wars. On the Lessons from the Cockpit show, we debrief some of the most fascinating and intriguing pilot, aircrew members, maintainers, and aviation enthusiasts from all over the world. We want to hear their stories, but more importantly, what did they learn during these extreme and extraordinary military, commercial, and even general aviation events? The purpose of our show is to show how does the aviation world really work and increase critical thinking skills both in the air and on the ground. Because many of the stories you're going to hear for the very first time on the Lessons from the Cockpit show. This episode of our show is brought to you by Wall Pilot, custom aviation art for the walls of your home, office, or hangar. These are 4, 6, and 8-foot profiles, extremely detailed, of your favorite aircraft that you can peel off and stick to any flat surface. There's 144 ready to print, but we do custom orders too of your favorite airplane with your name, tail number, and even your weapons load that you want on it. So go to wallpilot.com and order 1 or 2 of these fabulous prints for the walls of your home, office, or hangar. This episode is also brought to you by my book, Tanker Pilot, Lessons from the Cockpit, found in all 4 formats on Amazon: hardback, softback, Kindle, and Audible. The softback version has the pictures in black and white. There's an extra file that downloads with the Kindle and Audible versions that have the pictures in color. I've recently been on TikTok Live, and I've gotten a lot of questions about my book. And fortunately, a lot of people that have joined me on my TikTok Lives have said, "Hey, got your book, love it. Love the pictures. Sent one to my grandfather, sent one to my brother who flies KC-135s. It's been great getting these kinds of stories from all over the world. And my book, Tanker Pilot, is now on General Mike Minahan, the commander of Air Mobility Command. It's on his leadership library reading list. And I'm honored and really appreciate General Minahan including my book, Tanker Pilot, on his leadership library reading list. And boy, has a lot of people contacted me that have now read the book, which is truly fabulous. Today's show is a little different because I did it on location, so let's get right into it on the Lessons from the Cockpit show. Hey folks, I'm in Portsmouth, New Hampshire. I'm here with my good friend Jamie McCarthy, who's a director at Port City Air, an FBO. And what we're going to do today is we're going to do this episode from the FBO, and as you can hear, we got airplanes coming in, we got airplanes going out. There's even a helicopter down here about getting ready to go out. So, grab an adult beverage of your choice, sit down, strap in, and let's begin the Lessons from the Cockpit show with my good friend Jamie McCarthy. So Jamie, tell everybody what an FBO is and what an FBO does.
All right, yeah, it's a term most people probably have not heard, at least people outside of aviation. FBO means fixed base operator. So, and of course that doesn't even tell you that much about what an FBO is, but we handle all of the ground operations for aircraft coming and going here at Portsmouth. KPSM would be our FBO identifier here. We specialize particularly, we do everything. We handle everything from small aircraft, piston engine aircraft, everything all the way up to the Antonov, the C-5 Galaxy, the largest military jets in the world. We do all the ground handling, all the servicing, all the fueling. We do terminal services for the airline that's based here at Portsmouth as well, which is Allegiant. But our biggest customer would be the United States military and our NATO allies as well. We do a lot of cargo services. We actually own our own catering company as well. And we do a ton of work with, for instance, for the craft program, the Civilian Reserve Air Fleet. So a lot of the troop movements that transition to Portsmouth, we handle those, again, fueling, ground operations, servicing like laboratory, potable water. We do put catering on the aircraft, things like that. Over in the terminal, we do handle the passenger movements through the terminal, and obviously TSA handles security and all that other stuff. But we basically do it all here at Portsmouth. We do work under the Pease Development Authority, which is the airport authority that actually manages the airport property itself, along with not only the airport, but all the commercial property that's off the airport that was part of the Air Force Base where you were stationed here, it was actually those base housing and base administration buildings. A lot of that land has been redeveloped now as commercial property, which is a really big part of the community here as well, which makes Portsmouth a really attractive place to come and do business if you're, pharmaceutical firms, financial firms, so on and so forth. They like to take advantage of the high educational background here in the Northeast. A lot of different aspects of what we do, and another great thing about us being here at Portsmouth, along with the facilities we have, which is the 11,320 foot, 11,321 foot runway.
They still have the old SAC runway.
We'll fix that in post. That enables us to handle the largest aircraft in the world. This, at one time, was a 10th alternative for the space shuttle, I think. We can handle these enormous jets. We have a ton of ramp space for the jets. We have the fueling capacity to handle them. We have $25 million or somewhere thereabouts worth of equipment to fuel those jets, tow those jets. We have all the cargo equipment that's necessary to load and unload heavy cargo aircraft. But one of the great things about being where we are is we're in an amazing town. The city of Portsmouth is a big partner for us. They really make it easy for us to attract business because we can send crews right downtown and they stay at the hotels right in the center of town, and they go to all the restaurants and bars and all the activities here in Portsmouth. And the city is very welcoming, loves the crews, the military crews. They're really appreciated and welcome here in town. So it's just a really amazing place to do business. We love what we do. Absolutely. We put a supreme focus on customer service experience. Everyone from the high net worth individuals and the business jets and the Challenger 350 that just went by.
That just taxied by.
The Coast Guard Jayhawk that's firing up over there, that's getting ready to do some rescue training off the coast here. And of course you can throw a rock and hit the ocean. We're in that little coastage coastline in Hampshire, back in the war with Maine. And then we've got a KC-135 tanker down there. Airplane Mark used to fly when you had waterway.
I got to meet the crew just a few minutes ago. So just listen for a minute, folks, to what's going on right now. You have a business jet that's spinning up, a business jet that's spinning down, a Jayhawk helicopter that's getting ready to take off, and we're standing at an FB-111 drive-through from when I was here on nuclear alert. And what they have done here is amazing, absolutely amazing. And so why don't you talk to us about how Port City Air started and the history of what you have done to market Port City Air.
Yeah, so I probably won't have a voice by the time I'm done shouting out that Jayhawk.
Yeah.
We'll try to make it happen.
So spend a few minutes and tell me, how did you create this business? Because obviously we had nuclear bombers in here, right in here, literally right in here, and then you took it to you made it commercial. And you made it into this company that now can satisfy this Challenger that's over here. We just had the Jayhawk take off. We got another airplane taking off now. So explain how the evolution of creating Port City Air.
I've been here about 5 years now, and I've been really immersed in the lore of Port City Air, how the company's grown to the point where it is. And so for a long time, this field sat more or less underutilized. Big long runway, all this incredible ramp space, these things are hard to come by. Lots of hangars as well. I mean, we've got a bunch of old military hangars that many of which sat empty for years. In fact, when we get them, they're often full of raccoons and pigeons. We put a few $1 million into renovating them.
Yeah. The KC-135 was not a problem fitting in these things, so they're very, very large. Right. Go ahead.
Yeah. Again, the field sat very underutilized for a long time. I think about 25 to 26 years ago, one of the owners of the company now began the company as Port City Aircraft Repair, and we were actually just a repair station, one of those hangars over there, and that's essentially all they did. At the time, there was one FBO on the field. It was very small. We weren't doing a lot to attract business here. It was just basically servicing smaller jets and a lot of piston engine aircraft. At some point, this gentleman said, this field needs some development. Built the FBO building about 22 years ago, 104 Grafton over there. It has slowly grown since then. There were a number of years where that building existed, and we did have a fuel farm, and we had some capability, but really, the field wasn't marketed. Not a lot of people in aviation knew we were here, and a lot of it is about making people recognize we're here. So over the next few years, they began to do some marketing, and they started to grow that side of the business, and they did take on some more capabilities. And then it really started to grow a few years after that when my boss came on board, which was probably about 12 or 13 years ago, and really took a look at what we had here, facilities, our location, which is incredibly important because we are just across the pond from Europe, and we're right on the coastline. So
we're an hour north of Boston.
Yeah, about
an hour north of Boston.
Right. And we're a great location for what we call tech stops, whereas if you're just coming across from Europe and you need to get deeper into the interior of the country, you need a place to stop and fuel up, or do whatever you need to do to take do lab service, potable water, whatever have you. We're a great location for that. So my boss identified this location as being a great point to start growing that. And over the years, it really has grown. And one of the things that my boss did is a little serious taking on.
Yeah.
One of the things my boss realized is that a lot of these capabilities that we could take on board and start servicing are things like the craft program, 747, big aircraft, 767s, the C-17, US military C-17, that kind of stuff, right? You need to be able to fuel them. You need to be able to handle cargo because, if an aircraft comes in, say C-17 comes in and breaks, and it's going to be here for a week. That cargo needs to be somewhere. They'll send another C-17 in. The C-17, they'll take it off the broken airplane, put it on the other airplane, and they'll leave it there, right? While the other aircraft needs to be fixed. Well, if you can't unload that cargo and load that cargo onto another airplane, that airplane's stuck. The cargo is stuck.
Yeah, it's not
so it rules out an opportunity to stop there, right? They won't come there if you can't do it. So there was actually already a cargo company on the field which we purchased, and then we folded into the company and began operating with them and advertising the ability and marketing that ability to service cargo, which began bringing more aircraft in here, cargo aircraft, and we can do that for them. A number of years later, it was, we'd really love to get these craft program airplanes, the civilian reserve air fleet, to do troop movements overseas and coming back. But here's part of the issue with that is you've got a 747 coming in with 300 U.S. troops on it, and let's say it's going overseas. They're going over to Europe, and they're going to make 2 or 3 stops. They need to be what they call it triple catering. So 300 times 3, 900. So you've got 900 meals that you need to put on that airplane. Well, there was nobody around here who could do 900 meals, and we've done as many as 1,200, I think. But there were no caterers here who could do it. Now, Boston has caterers that can do it, but I think Lufthansa is actually down in Boston, and they will do that. So Boston could attract them, but Boston's not an ideal location for that. It's a great airport. It's a congested airport. And so
very busy. Very busy.
Right. And so finding this spot to put a 747 can be difficult. So we had that part of it going for us, and at one point my boss said, well, why don't we buy a catering company? Let's buy a catering company. Everybody's like, you're out of your mind. We don't know. We're not caterers. We don't know. And he's like, we're going to have to do it. We bought a catering company. We upscaled it to a commercial kitchen. We moved it here on the field. And basically, what you buy when you're buying something like that is the expertise. You're buying people who know how to craft food and put it together that way. That's been hugely successful for us. And enormous. When you get into a situation where you don't have anybody in the area that can do what you need them to do to allow you to go after this business, you kind of have to create it yourself. And you vertically integrate these things into your company, and you become an all services provider. And that's really where we are. We've built a pretty great business here. Military customers love us because we really focus so hard on just making sure, when they come in, if they're staying locally, again, they get to stay downtown and they get to stay in a great town. We take care of their rental cars, we take care of their hotel arrangements. if they're coming in on a tech stop, we offer them pizza. If there's 9 crew on the airplane, we'll bring them 3 pizzas, and we give them, they get a hot meal when they stop. And an hour and a half later, they're taking fuel and they're on their way. But this might be 11 o'clock at night. It might be 1 a.m. in the morning. You never know exactly what's going to happen.
So you guys operate 24 hours?
Oh yeah, 24/7, 365. We're not allowed to close. This airport never closes. The worst weather imaginable. And this is one of the areas where it's really great to have Pease Development Authority, who manages the field and handles that part of it.
Yeah.
They have the most amazing snow clearing equipment. They can have that in a blizzard conditions. They can have that runway cleared in about 15 minutes.
Wow.
Having them, they're
an 11,000 foot by 150 wide, and you can have it done in how long?
In about 15 minutes. You'll see them. They'll head out there and they'll do a pass, and they're done. And the next thing you know, there's a Challenger like that one taking off. Yeah, it's pretty neat. We handle the de-icing here as well, so we can. We've got a 78-foot reach global de-icer that can do the C5 Galaxy tail. You just don't find that in most places. It's one of the things we do is, we have C5 tow bar. We have pretty much every tow bar imaginable and tow head, because we never know what we're going to have to service and we're going to have to move. As a result, we have collected all this equipment, but it's given us enormous capability. And if somebody comes here and something happens, they know we can help them out. Aircraft maintenance, we have a 145 repair station. So FAA, CFR Part 145 is our federal regulation that governs aircraft maintenance. Well, we have a compliant repair station that has all kinds of tooling that is routinely requested by the military when they come in and they break down. And I've had them ask me for things like that. Hey man, I need a 3,000 psi nitrogen hose, but it's got to be 30 feet long. You don't happen to have anything like that, do you? And I'm like, as a matter of fact, I do. And they look at me like, no, stop. And I'm like, no, I really do. And I bring it out to them, and they're able to service the accumulator in the tail of the 135, which they leak pretty regularly. And so they're able to go on their way, and they're not delayed a day or two. That's the part of my job that I love, is the look on their faces when you made their day, right? And they're able to go home.
Okay, so I want you to tell my listeners the story of the A-10 crew chief that you told me on the phone, saying, I got an airplane that's got a leak, we need to get it home. Tell that story real quick, because this is really, really fascinating. It really tells you the kind of service that these guys Port City Air gives to people, that this FBO is capable of doing. With the military folks coming in and out for air shows, all kinds of things. There's all kinds of airplanes that stop here. But this was a really fascinating story, what happened to this A-10. I'm going to let you go from there.
It's the Air Show 2021, Thunder over New Hampshire, and that's a beautiful September Monday morning. A couple days leading up to an air show are your barely controlled chaos. Then the air show itself goes off with military precision. And then the Monday, the get-home day, when everybody's trying to get out of here, that is, again, barely controlled chaos, right? So it's 7:30, and I was in aircraft maintenance at the time. I actually started here 5 years ago as the director of jet maintenance, and then 2 years ago, I moved over into operations. I'm just walking in the door. It's like 10 past 7 in the morning, and I get this phone call from a panicked A-10 crew chief down in Maryland. And he's like, hey man, I told you that you're the jet guy there. I've got an A-10 down there on the guard side, and it's leaking hydraulic fluid. Man, I just want to get that airplane home. Is there anything you can do? Can you service hydraulics on an A-10? I'm like, I don't know. I've never serviced an A-10 before. Tell me a little bit about it. So he starts running me through the system and what, where the reservoir is and all that. And I'm like, okay, what kind of fluid is it? 5606? He's like, is that the red stuff, man? And I'm like, yeah, it's red. He says, yeah, the fluid's red. It must be that stuff. So I'm like, all right, cool. I should be able to do it. I got a Bowser. Yeah. I said, but, I can't go over there and work on the airplane. I'm going to have to get the airplane down here, coordinate with the guard to get my guys on. And so he did. He made a couple phone calls. He calls me back. He says, yeah, they said you can come on and get the airplane. You bring a tug down and go get it. I'm like, all right, cool. So now it's about 2 miles away. The guard base, we're down here on one end of the field, guards on the other. Yeah. And they're parked in the middle of that whole ramp. Yeah. Normally when I talk to my line guys, I'm like, hey, I need you to go 2 miles away and drag the airplane all the way over here to the FBO ramp. They're like, get out of here. We're not doing that, But on this day, you're like, hey, guys, listen. down in the guard base. I'm sorry about this. I know we're busy today. There's an A-10. I need you guys to go grab it, hook up, and drag it down to the FBO. The reaction is like, A-10? Well, yeah, let's go. And they're fighting over it. Right? Let's grab a fighter bar. Let's go. And
maybe we can get a bullet.
Yeah, right. And so it was so cool to watch that. About half an hour later, they're dragging it down that way, and it's coming down to the FBO ramp. And as I'm seeing, and by the way, they're sitting there taking selfies of themselves with the airplane behind them. I see and as I get it in sight, it's coming my way. I'm thinking, great. I got the Bowser with the fluid ready to go. I get another phone call from the crew chief. He's like, hey, man, I got bad news. And I'm like, oh, what is it? He says, it's not that 5606 fluid. It's some other red stuff. And I'm like, all right, 83282. Oh, I think that's the mil spec. He said, yeah, whatever that is, man, it's that stuff. I'm like, all right. Well, it sets me back about a half an hour, but I'm going to have to, clear my Bowser and clear the change the filter and all this other stuff. But I think I can do it, right? So now I'm thinking, oh, yeah, I hope this goes well, right? They got to be out of here by 10 a.m. So anyway, they do get the airplane down there. I've got some really neat pictures of me working on an A-10, which I wasn't in the military myself. So I would never get the opportunity to do that if that hadn't happened. And yeah, we got him fixed up, pilot fired up. I did the fire guard for him, marched him out. He was on his way. He was really, really happy and excited to. And he said to me, he's like, we don't get that kind of support anywhere. That is probably the coolest part of my job is I hear that on a regular basis. The military crews come in. One time they were up at the desk and they said, yeah, man, TACC said we got to go to Bangor. And we're like, nah, we're not doing that. We're going to Portsmouth. Y'all are legendary. And I'm like, that makes, I tear up a little sometimes when they say that because I'm so full of pride about that part of it and what we do. So, yeah,
but the satisfaction you get of doing something like that, it's like instant satisfaction that you got to work on an A-10, even though you're putting greasy, grimy fluid in it. But you showed me the picture where you guys are all running around underneath it, getting the airplane ready to go, okay? And the pilot's going like, okay, yeah, put the air steer, Oh, and that was funny. Tell them about the air steer door.
Oh, yeah, so the air steer door. So the pilot looked like Mike Ditka, looked like a young Ditka. And the crew door has a graphic on it, which you can blow it up in the picture. I'll show it to you. But it says, what would win, an A-10 or an A-10 named Ditka? And it's like a silhouette of Mike Ditka. Ditka, the Saturday Night, the Saturday Night Live sketch, right? It was from that whole. And that guy was awesome. So we then had an A-10 squadron come through for Operation Air Defender. We had 14 of them. I got pictures of that too. That was really cool. That maintenance crew was amazing. Slippy and Mike, they were just two awesome dudes. Hung around for the better part of a week with those guys running that operation. Finding a place to put 14 A-10s and park them like that is tough. When they first came out, when I first did the plan for it, they were parked over there on the 205 ramp. But we get out there. Now, keep in mind, we've had multiple A-10s parked out here before. And then, so I think, we'll just put them over there. It's just going to be a bigger footprint. We'll expand it, right? And so we get out there, and Slippy, the crew chief for the whole operation, says, I love the area. There's only one problem. I'm like, what is it? He says, there's no grounding points. I'm like, nobody's ever asked for them. And he's like, well, yeah, our unit's really a stickler for that. Our commander really wants to have grounding points. So I'm like, all right, so I guess we got to pivot. So I took him for a walk over to the cargo ramp where we do have tie downs, which are effective ground points. Can we make this work? And he's like, yeah, this will work fine if we can fit them. So we went back into the FBO to my computer and did the software and laid out how the aircraft could be parked, and they gave the green light for it. And then 3 days later, 14 A-10s showed up like clockwork, and we lined them up over there, and it worked out beautifully. They were here for about a week. Then they went over to a couple countries over in Europe where they did Operation Air Defender in June, which was an enormous thing for us. I mean, we had, I think, 75 C-17s come through here for the month. Most of them quick turning overnight, so we'd have 3 or 4 a night coming through in wee hours. And then during the day, by the way, when the A-10s came through, they had 2 KC-135s come through as a support aircraft to fly them over and refuel them on the way. And during the day, we would have the aerial refuelers coming in and running missions out here, 46s, 135s, and 10s. Would be, all day long we were pumping gas and sending them on their way. So that's tremendous.
So that you guys know, the KC-10s can take up with 340,000 pounds. The 135 was 195,000 pounds. We normally took off with about 180,000 pounds. And the KC-46 is like 210. Think about 75 C-17s coming through and the amount of fuel that it took to do all of that. So why don't you talk about the logistics of fuel real quick to support something like that?
Yeah.
And what you have to do to get the fuel here.
Oh, you want me to give away all my trade secrets?
Well, I don't want to give away trade secrets, but just in an overarching way.
Yeah, no, I can talk about that.
Logistics of fuel.
It is an enormous undertaking, and during our busy season or an operation like that, we're turning over our fuel inventory every couple of days. We're taking 15 drops a day on a busy day like that. And the thing is, it's not like we're a port city in the sense that we can take fuel from the barge. It all has to come in on trucks, and it all has to get uploaded into the fuel farm, which means every time it comes in on a truck, we have to hook up to the farm, pump it into the farm. And then while you're doing that, at least on one of our farms, you can't pump into a truck that's putting fuel in an airplane. So we actually have 2 fuel farms, so that it gives us some flexibility. Yeah. So it's definitely a challenge. You're juggling a lot. I have an amazing line staff. They're very experienced, very dedicated. They work in incredible conditions. I mean, last February we had 3 days straight of -15 temperatures, and they were out there working in it and pumping fuel. And I cannot talk enough about my line staff and how they're the heart that pumps the blood in the company. The blood being the fuel, right? Yeah. Without them, we don't exist. Without them, we don't. There's no reason for us to be here. Love those people. So, but back to that point about the fuel, we also are really, really fortunate to be partnered with Titan Fuels, and Titan Fuels out in North Carolina, particularly our guy locally, a guy named Steve Tibbetts, who he's a genius and a master when it comes to finding people who can get you fuel. Because one of the big problems we have right now is trucks. There aren't enough trucks out there, and there aren't enough drivers, more drivers than trucks, honestly, to get the fuel up to us. So we've had to go, during the busy season, we've had to go to other Connecticut to bring fuel up here. We get drivers out of other states to come up, and we have to pay extra to do that.
I did not know that.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy right now. So one of the fields, you've heard a lot lately about bringing back the trades. One of the trades they really need to go after is truck drivers, because they need to start getting more people to get CDLs and drive trucks. The industry's hurting. Right? Every industry's hurting for good, skilled labor, unskilled and skilled labor, both. I'm a big believer in higher education as well, but I also think it's a great idea if you can learn a trade.
Yeah.
You can always fall back on the trade. And aircraft mechanics, we're struggling with aircraft mechanics. There's a pilot shortage. In both fields right now, it's a great time to get into it, because you know what? They're paying. Like, you want to be an aircraft mechanic right out of school, you're making really good money now, unlike when I started as an aircraft mechanic 17 years ago. Pilots, for a long time, in the early days, pilots were rock stars. And then for a long time, they just became like bus drivers. Like these little airlines were paying pilots literally 20 grand a year to start. And it was a long time before they started making money. Now, guys getting ATP ratings are making really good money right out of the gate, because the industry, they're now, it's a seller's market for labor right now in aviation. So it's a great time to get in it. Just for anybody watching, thinking about it.
I'll leave his email address.
Yeah, no, definitely.
Send resumes.
We're kind of lucky in that we're a really good company, great company to work for. I love capital L, the company I work for. I love the people I work for and with. So I feel very fortunate and I live in a great state. New Hampshire is just a fantastic place to live, despite the weather. I mean, it does get cold, yes. We do get snow, yes.
But tell them why, because there's really some great things about living in New Hampshire, and one of them is taxes.
Federal, no state sales tax. We have no income tax. Yeah, they get you in some other places. Like, it's expensive to register a car. Property taxes can be high depending on where you are.
Yeah.
But my feeling on the matter is I'm okay with paying taxes as long as I feel like I'm getting something from a tax dollar.
Yeah.
My issue is when I go south to Massachusetts, where I grew up, by the way, you pay all this money in taxes and you feel like, what am I getting for it? The roads are falling apart. The bridges are falling apart. I come up here, I don't deal with that. Me, I love to shoot. I'm a gun guy. I really love that, there basically are no gun laws up here. I mean, but it's just, so for a guy who likes guns, it's a great place to live. In fact, it's one of the reasons I left Massachusetts. I grew up riding dirt bikes. I can ride my dirt bikes up here and things like that. So if you're an outdoors type of person, New Hampshire's perfect. You like to hunt, you like to fish, you like mountains.
It's all right here.
Yeah.
It's all right
people
here.
are nice. Like, don't let anybody tell you otherwise about people from the Northeast. We can be hard to penetrate that that tough exterior, but once you do, we can easily make friends for life. Not a problem.
And if you're a seafood person, oh my gosh, you can actually go down to Portsmouth and get lobsters right off the boat in some cases. That's where Valerie is right now. She's going down looking at the lobster pounds and driving along the seacoast, doing some crazy things. I want you to tell them the story about the C5 tow bar and what happened, because that's another great story. Why that's such a huge thing.
It was not this past November, but the November before, so over a year ago. There was a C5 out there doing touch and goes. It was a nice day, nice sunny day. And so they touched down, powered up to go. Yeah, the newer C5s, the Mike models, have the bigger engines in them. They put out a lot more bleed air.
Yeah.
And, they can sometimes, when they're powering up and they firewall it, they can overpressure the bleed air ducts. Well, in this particular day, they did overpressure a bleed air duct, and the one in the left wing root just suddenly ruptured. And instantly it fills the airplane with 400 degree bleed air, and it's dusty, nasty bleed air. It's compressed. They think they're on fire, and so they throttle back immediately and come to a dead stop right at about the 7,500 foot mark of the runway. It's like, oh well, awesome. So there's a big, giant paperweight in the middle of the runway now, and basically the airport was more or less effectively shut down, at least for landings at the time. It was out there for the better part of a day. If I remember correctly, it might have even been into the next morning. The runway shut down. A lot seriously impacts the business here because we only have the one. Yeah. We don't have two runways here like some other fields do. We're scrambling. We're like, we need to get the airplane off, and eventually they did decide we can fire up the right two engines and taxi off with a crew chief up in the cupola, on guard. But they taxied off, but then they end up right in smack in the middle of our busiest ramp. Like they parked them right in the middle of our busiest ramp where we need to be able to park all the tankers and stuff, right? So we're like, we're still kind of hosed here, We end up making some phone calls, and we're like, I need to be able to tow this airplane. Y'all don't have a tow bar on the airplane. And of course, they were doing touch and goes. They should have brought a tow bar, right? Now the tow bar on one of those things is like 35 feet long. It actually splits in the middle. It probably I want to say it weighs 8,500 pounds. It's massive. They're like, the people down in Dover are like, all right, we're going to send up a tow bar. We got it on a flatbed. It's coming up to you. You'll be there tonight. I'm like, all right, awesome. What time? They're like, about 1 a.m. And I'm like, oh, great. So I guess I'm going to be here at 1 a.m. Yeah, it did show up at about 1. By the time we got them on the field, it was about 2 a.m. Brought them down to cargo, took a couple forklifts and offloaded it, set it all up the next morning. We were able to tow it way down to the other end of the field to an unused portion of the ramp. And where it sat for the next better part of a week while they fixed it. What we did then is we're like, all right, we need a tow bar. We cannot have that happen again. We can't risk that. We made a bunch of phone calls, finally did find one somewhere, and C5, there aren't a ton of them left, and they made a ton of these tow bars. So yeah, take it, get rid of it. Like, we want it out of here. We don't want it anymore. It's 30 feet long, and it's the the one. It's actually the non-portable one. It's the one that doesn't split in the middle. So they sent it to us, and it's actually down the other end of the field. We leave it at the guard base actually. It's so big we don't really have anywhere to keep it. So if another C5 does decide to blow a bleed air duct or something happens out there on the runway, we can tow them. We have the ability. And of course, you need a massive tug to tow something that big. Pretty much the biggest tug.
And so you guys have one of those tugs here?
We do. Right? Yeah. We have to push back 747, fully loaded 747s all the time.
That's right.
Pretty rare we have to tow one in forward, but we have to push them back on a regular C. We have to have that stuff here.
So, and the tow bar for the C5, as you heard, is unique, and you have to have that to do operations for C5s. I remember being at the Tanker Airlift Control Center once, and the C5 for 1 month had its capability rate above 65%. And they had a cake. The C5 Bubba's made a cake because it went to like 72 for like 1 month.
Yeah.
And then went down to like 55 or something like that. That was one of the things that I learned at the TACC is this is a very unique tow bar. It's massive, as you can understand. And you can't do C5 maintenance without one of these things because you all know how big the C5 is. It's just crazy.
And it's a very cool airplane, but whenever one comes in, we're like, all right, how many days is it staying? Because it's going to break. And like they're huge and they're used hard, because there aren't a lot of them left. 17 does most of the day-to-day movement. 5's used mostly for outsized cargo. But yeah, they do get ridden hard and put away wet. They do break a lot, but very cool airplane.
Okay, now we're standing in front of, again, an FB111 drive-through from the time period I was here, but they're using it for something else. This is the cargo loader's and the catering truck that they use. So I'm going to have him tell us a little bit, Jamie, about what these loaders do, and particularly this great big one here and the other one on the other side, and why you have to have these kinds of things.
I'm not a cargo guy. I know a little bit about them, but you have here the Commander 30. That's a full main deck loader. It lifts up and you can push the containers and the pallets right onto the airplane. Really, again, it'll load pretty much anything in existence. You know, everything from the 747 freighters, 767 freighters to the Antonov, which is a regular occurrence here, and the C5s and everything else. The other one is a K loader, which is kind of the earlier version of that. It's big. The Commander's much bigger, heavier duty, but we still use the K loader a lot.
Yeah, everybody in AMC is sort of K loaders.
Yeah, no, there's many K loaders out there, but it's definitely a critical piece of equipment. And oftentimes too, it's just nice to have two, because if one breaks, you need one. And then you have all the dollies and all the pallets here that are also used for loading. So those are about 100 slave pallets sitting around, 10 or 12 dollies. This is, you know, when you put all our fuel trucks and everything else together, it's about $25 million worth of equipment. It's very, very considerable.
Jeez.
The catering food truck here, which, you know, we use at events and things like that, that doesn't really have a lot to do with the air side of, but we still use it quite a bit for events, and it sort of spreads the word about the company. And so these revetments right now are used for mostly storing. We don't keep aircraft in here very often. They're wind tunnels. You know, when the wind gets going, they really start whipping through there, and it can damage airplanes.
It really does.
Yeah, it'll knock you over walking around. So they're very cool. They're just nice shelters to have. They're really, really stout. Like, things were really built very, very well back in the day. I mean, they didn't mess around when it came to putting these up. So.
And they're built for nuclear bombers. Okay, that's the big thing.
Yeah. And over here, I don't know if you want to show the camera, but over here on the floor, in the ground rather, this is the old, where the hydrant point for fueling the aircraft right here.
You got to see this.
Now this is all really old stuff, but this is the hydrant connection hose points for the aircraft. And then under there is the inlet for the tank, which is under the ground, which is, there's a bayonet connection, and then you would fill the tank, and all the fuel will be taken right out of under here. And of course, Mark can tell you more about that than I can, but these are the quick reaction having a launch.
So let me talk about those for just real quick. We're standing in one of the FB-111 drive-thrus once again. What we're doing is, what they've done is they've taken all of this space that had nuclear bombers and have turned it into places where they can store things, as you see here behind us. Now, you have to understand, when I was here in the 80s, we had 6 FB-111s on alert, all of them carrying 4 nuclear weapons, 2.5 megatons of thermonuclear attitude adjustment, as we called it. This hydrant that I just showed you here behind us is what they used to fill the airplanes up once they needed gas. And often they would download the gas and move the airplane, of course, after they took all the nuclear weapons off, because we'd swap airplanes out all the time. But we'd also have exercises that we called movers. And imagine this, Jamie. You have 6 FB-111s and 5 tankers, all of them firing cartridges to start their engines.
Yeah.
In the KC-135, the starter switches were on the pilot side. Normal start was up, and we pushed all 4 switches down to do the cart start. And so all 4 carts would go off, which was really smoky. And the crew chief would say, clear 4.5 and all 4 clear to start carts. And we would push those buttons down, and literally smoke would come billowing out of the engines because these shotgun shells got the fan blades turning. And at 12%, we would put the throttles over the hump to put fuel into it, okay? And that's how they would start. And I think, if I remember right, the A models, it was like 58 to 62% was idle, okay? Something like that. Excuse me, 48 to 52, all right? And so it was the craziest thing to see that. Of course, it was really smoky. Sorry, whenever you hear an engine cut off like
that was...
you always go,
we both go, what's going on there?
That's not good. That doesn't sound good.
Are you hearing his engine still?
No, I'm not.
I'm not either.
And his... All right, folks, hang on just a second. We got something going on here. I'm going to stop.
So that was wild. We thought we were going to see a Piper crash, but it turned out it looks like he was just practicing engine outs or something. I don't know what that was.
So, folks, when we cut off, you could hear the airplane, I'm sure, powered up, it's taken off, all of a sudden, silence. And this guy circled around, and he came low over here between the hardened aircraft shelters, like he was going to land on the taxiway, and he got down pretty low, and all of a sudden power comes back up and he leaves.
Yeah.
So we thought we were going to see either really good airmanship or some really poor airmanship. Yeah. He did what he did. I wouldn't have done it that way, but it worked out for him, okay? Wasn't that crazy?
Actually, I'm glad it did. I don't want to see anybody crash. It's not the kind of thing
you don't want to see it. You don't ever want to see that, okay?
Yeah.
We practice emergencies all the time. And yesterday I got to fly in the KC-46 sim, and they were doing emergency procedures and all those kinds of. When you're in the airlines, you have to understand, you are in one of the safest environments ever. I have been on airliners that have lost engines, and we've gone into someplace. I've lost engines when I've been flying the KC-135, and it's so ingrained in your head and the emergency procedures that you got to do in order to survive that he must have been just practicing, okay, here's engine out on takeoff, this is what I'm going to do and how I'm going to do it. And the great thing about Pease here, and when I was here, we could use the taxiway as a landing surface. Okay?
Yeah, and if you have in an emergency, especially with a smaller airplane, they'll definitely let you do that. But it's one of the reasons why the flight schools like this, because it is such a big forgiving environment to practice those things. There is Skyhaven to the north with a 4,500 foot somewhere thereabouts runway, which is plenty big for those airplanes, but still it gives students, and especially new students, a feeling of, to see this enormous runway in front of them, it gives them a lot of confidence, and then they can kind of work their way to something smaller after develop some skills. It's a popular airport, which is it goes to show you with the type of traffic we get here. Again, it's everything from, especially in the summertime, the little aircraft, the piston engine aircraft fly in a lot, and then it's a comfort factor for a lot of people.
It really is.
Yeah.
The other great thing about this airport is it's fully instrumented. The air traffic control is here 24/7, and it's fully instrumented. So you can get in here in any kind of weather. Cat 2, Cat 3 approaches, can't do those. Not certified for that. I'm ILS, both ends too. Localizer, VORTAC. They have a VORTAC out here in the middle of the field, down at the other end of the field. If you want to come to a place and practice instrument approaches, this is a great place to do it, because you have instrument approaches at both ends of the runways, air traffic control, it's fully staffed tower, and it's just a great place to come and play around when you're doing those kinds of things. So one of the great things that we did here is we had what was called the ACE program, Accelerated Co-Pilot Enrichment. We were flying T-37. Now imagine giving two co-pilots the keys to a T-37 and say, go get flying time. It was a license to steal.
Yeah.
It really was.
Must have told them twice.
Yeah, that was one of the ways that we were able to get time out here when I was stationed here, was through the ACE program. And I got an extra about 700 hours or so flying in the little T-37 Tweety Bird. They were all at the other end of the runway. Again, being fully instrumented at both ends, it didn't matter which runway we were on, because we could fly ILSs, localizers, TACANs, visual approaches, all those kinds of things here at Pease Air Force Base. And fortunately, folks, yesterday I got to fly the KC-46 sim. I did 2 ILS approaches and a visual approach overhead kind of thing. I didn't scare the aircrew. I actually landed the airplane. It was pretty cool. And I'm going to talk about that.
You did some touch and goes.
I did 3 touch and goes, okay? And the crew says, for a guy that hasn't flown a long time, you're doing pretty good. The thing is the avionics in the airplane have really improved from the time period when I was flying. Jamie, you mentioned doing maintenance. Talk to him a little bit about the maintenance that you have to do on avionics and the FAA rules for that, and the kinds of avionics you guys work on here at Port City Air.
We do have a full avionics shop here. We can do certs, 91, 411, 413 certification, which is, it's probably a bunch of mumbo jumbo to people who don't work in aviation or are not pilots, but there's something called our RVSM, Reduced Vertical Separation Minimums, which allow aircraft to fly at higher flight levels at only 1,000 feet of vertical separation. So imagine 2 airliners, one coming at each other like this, and there's only 1,000 feet. Your altitude measuring equipment has to be really, really precise. And part of the certification process is, putting test sets on it, setting the aircraft to a certain altitude, and then making sure that what is shown in the cockpit is what is actually reading the pedostatic test set. And you bottom line is there's a very, very small margin for error in RVSM. To certify an aircraft for that, you have to have really, really sensitive and very equipment, which we do. Full avionics modification shop that works on everything from small aircraft, and we're talking, it'll replace an entire steam panel in a craft with all Garmin stuff, and they'll do it, top to bottom, and they do really premium work. We have an amazing avionics shop. Having that comes with hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of test equipment, installation equipment, and wire termination, all that other stuff. We're actually an Airbus helicopters service center, so we do a lot of work on the A-Star, A320s, A330s. And then we also do, we have a full jet shop that we work on a lot of Falcons, Gulfstreams, that kind of stuff. Again, which is when I was brought on here, I was actually brought on to start the jet shop, which I did. Okay. And then, 5 years later, it's thriving and doing really well. We have a piston engine shop also. So we do pretty much everything in terms, we're actually a class 3 rated repair station, which is anything under 12,500 pounds gross weight, we can work on for our CRS. So that's a nice thing to have too. So maintenance is an extremely important capability, and I of course I have a soft spot for maintenance but I like to tell people that at any airfield, especially a busy airfield, that maintenance is soft infrastructure in the sense that we're not the tower, if they're broken, they can't fly. If you need to fix it, you need to have maintenance or you're calling somebody to come in for field to come, and it costs a lot more. It wastes time in getting people to come to you to do the maintenance. So having a capable maintenance shop on the field is another huge advantage for us in making this a viable stop for anybody wanting to operate and come through the United States this way. So, and we've also become, we have a lot of flights with NetJets who fly exclusive, and some of these fractional Part 135 operators. Plane Sense is right over there. This operator in the United States with the PC-12 and PC-24 right over there. Fantastic people. We deal with them a lot because we have a fuel contract and service them, but they're tremendous partners here in the field. So we do have a lot of great partners here. The PDA is terrific, again, with the snow clearing the facilities and managing the actual physical plant of the airport. In Plane Sense, Jagundo over there, the marketing people, they're fantastic. It's a great place to operate.
Well, folks, that ends the ramp show. We had a great time just walking around the ramp, watching all kinds of different airplanes, Challengers, Coast Guard Jayhawks, tankers. Got to interview and talk with some of the tanker crews that were out there, particularly the ground crews that were fueling jets. They were actually flying operational support missions for F-16s. That's all I can say. I knew what kind of mission they were doing, but I can only tell you that they were refueling F-16s and they were loaded with live weapons. Imagine that. This episode has been financially supported by Wall Pilot, custom aviation art for the walls of your home, office, or hangar. Please go by Wall Pilot and take a look at our 143 ready-to-print 4, 6, and 8-foot vinyl graphics of aircraft, your favorite aircraft in profile. These are extremely detailed, folks. We research these things like crazy. That's how we support the show. We do custom orders also. So if you have a favorite airplane, you want your name on it, a particular tail number, particular weapons load, we can do that. And I just downloaded 250 more profiles. We have to fill them in, but again, we have a lot more to include helicopters. I'm not liking doing helicopters. They're really difficult because of the rotor heads and of course the tail rotors. I've got Apaches and Sea Kings that I've been working on for over a year. But please go by wallpilot.com and buy one or two of these really incredible pieces of art that you can peel off and stick to any flat surface. We also do unit emblems. If you want to have patches on your car or truck, we can do that too. My book, Tanker Pilot, Lessons from the Cockpit, can be found on Amazon in all 4 formats: hardback, softback, Kindle, and Audible. The hardback, Kindle, and Audible versions, the pictures, 32 of them, are in color. The softback, they are in black and white. I wrote this book to give everybody a behind-the-scenes look at what air refueling planning and execution looks like. There's a lot of incredible stories about the air campaigns over Iraq, the first Gulf War Desert Storm, Kosovo, Afghanistan, and Iraq, and some contingency operations that I was involved with. You'll really enjoy this book, and it's getting really good reviews, and it is now on General Mike Minahan's Leadership Library reading list. We're going to have another episode next week with Jamie McCarthy that we did over Zoom after I had left Portsmouth. And he goes into more about what a fixed base operations and FBO does and some of great stories about who has come through Portsmouth, what they did while they were there, and how they were able to support them and get them out. This episode can be found at lessonsfromthecockpit.show or on my website at markasera.com. I really appreciate all of you going by, listening to the show. We're getting a lot of good numbers now because I've been doing a lot of things on social media. Last month I had 8.5 million views on my YouTube channel. So thank you to all of you who have been listening to the Lessons from the Cockpit show. Thanks for coming by, folks, and listening and downloading my episodes. We'll talk to you again next week on the Lessons from the Cockpit show.